What if the Mongol Empire never collapsed? Imagine waking up tomorrow and checking your phone, but instead of scrolling through Instagram, you're using an app designed in Karakoram. Your coffee? Shipped along trade routes that have run uninterrupted for 800 years. And that history test you're studying for? Yeah, it's about the 47th Khan of the Mongol Empire. Sounds impossible, right? Well, strap in, because we're about to explore a world where the largest contiguous empire in history never fell apart. Here's the reality. The Mongol Empire was a monster. At its peak in the 1270s, it stretched from Korea to Hungary, covering over 24 million square kilometers. 1 in every 4 humans lived under Mongol rule. But by 1368, it had fractured into squabbling khanates, and by 1500, it was basically over. But what if it wasn't? What if one decision, one reform, one brilliant leader had kept it all together? Today, we're diving into 2 radically different futures. One where the eternal empire becomes humanity's greatest unifier, and one where it becomes an unstoppable nightmare that swallows the world whole. The turning point? It all comes down to what happens in 1294, right after Kublai Khan dies. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind and see how we got here. Stage 1. The cracks appear. Let's set the scene. It's 1260, and Kublai Khan just became the Great Khan. But here's the problem. His brothers aren't happy. Arik Boka challenges him for the throne. The empire fights its first civil war. Kublai wins, but the damage is done. The Mongol unity starts cracking. By the 1270s, the empire is technically one entity, but practically, it's 4 separate khanates barely talking to each other. The Golden Horde in Russia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and Kublai's Yuan dynasty in China. They share a heritage, but they're drifting apart. Different religions, different priorities, different enemies. Kublai tries to hold it together. He's brilliant, honestly. He maintains the YAM system, the Mongol postal network that makes Amazon Prime look slow. He keeps the Silk Road secure, promotes trade, brings in scholars from everywhere. Marco Polo shows up and can't believe what he's seeing. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. The empire is too big. Communication takes months. Local khans start making decisions without consulting Karakoram. The center isn't holding. Then 1294 hits. Kublai Khan dies. And in our timeline, that's when everything goes to hell. His successors fight each other. The khanates go their separate ways. Within 2 generations, the dream of a unified Mongol world is dead. But what if someone saw this coming? What if Kublai's grandson, Temur Khan, was smarter than history gave him credit for? Stage 2, the reform that changes everything. In our alternate timeline, Temur Khan does something radical in 1295. Instead of trying to rule the entire empire as one massive autocracy, he creates the Council of Khans, a federal system where each khanate keeps autonomy but shares central institutions. Think of it like this. Each khanate controls its own territory, collects its own taxes, manages its own affairs. But they all contribute to shared infrastructure: the YAM system, the military reserves, the trade protection network. They meet every 3 years in rotating capitals. Decisions require majority vote. No single khan can overrule the others. It's genius, and here's why it works. It acknowledges reality. The empire is too big to micromanage. But by creating shared interests, trade routes, mutual defense, cultural exchange, The Khans have more to gain by staying together than splitting apart. The Golden Horde's Tokhta Khan initially resists. He wants independence. But when Temur points out that alone, he'll face constant pressure from European kingdoms and lose access to Chinese silk markets, he calculates the math. Unity is profitable. By 1300, the system is working. The Khanates aren't identical, but they're cooperating, and that changes everything. Stage 3, the domino effect. Here's where it gets wild. Because the Mongol Empire stays unified, several historical events never happen, or happen completely differently. The plague? In our timeline, it spread partly because Mongol trade routes connected diseased regions. But in this timeline, the unified empire has coordinated quarantine protocols by 1340. The Black Death still exists, but instead of killing half of Europe, it's contained. Millions of lives are saved. The Ming Dynasty in China never happens. There's no collapse of Mongol rule to rebel against. The Yuan dynasty continues, but it evolves. By 1350, it's no longer purely Mongol. It's a hybrid culture, blending Chinese administration with Mongol military prowess and Persian scientific knowledge. Russia doesn't emerge as an independent power. Moscow remains a tributary city. Without the Mongol yoke narrative to unite against, Russian identity develops completely differently, more Eurasian, less isolationist. The Ottoman Empire faces a problem. In our timeline, they filled the power vacuum left by the collapsed Ilkhanate, but in this timeline, there is no vacuum. The Ottomans either stay regional or get absorbed. Either way, they never become the dominant power in the Middle East. By 1400, the map of the world looks nothing like you know it. And we're only getting started. Stage 4, the question of evolution, 1400 to 1500. Here's where our timeline splits into two dramatically different futures. Because by 1400, the Mongol Empire faces a choice that will define the next 5 centuries. The empire has been stable for a century. Trade is booming. Cities like Samarkand, Beijing, and Tabriz are the largest in the world. The Pax Mongolica has created unprecedented peace and prosperity across Eurasia. But there's a question nobody can avoid anymore. What is the empire for? Some Khans, particularly the younger generation educated in the mixed cultures of the empire, argue for transformation. They want the empire to evolve from a military confederation into a true commonwealth. Democratic councils, shared citizenship, freedom of movement, investment in science and education. Make it a force for human progress. Others, the traditional military aristocracy, want to keep the old ways. Mongol supremacy, tributary states, military expansion. They look at Europe, at Africa, at the Americas that Mongol explorers have just confirmed exist, and they see opportunities for conquest. In 1453, a great Kurultai, a grand council, is called in Karakorum. Representatives from every corner of the empire gather. The question is put to vote: evolution or domination? This is where our story splits. And trust me, both futures are absolutely insane. Let me show you what happens in each. The good ending, Scenario A, the eternal Commonwealth. The vote passes. Transformation wins by a narrow margin, 1,453 to 1,550, the Great Reform. The empire becomes the Mongol Commonwealth in 1455. It's a shock to everyone. Hereditary Khan positions are gradually replaced by elected governors. A bicameral parliament is established, one house for regions, one for the population. Citizenship rights are extended to all subjects, regardless of ethnicity. And here's the beautiful part. It works. By 1470, the first Commonwealth University opens in Samarkand, teaching in multiple languages. The curriculum blends Chinese philosophy, Islamic science, European mathematics, and Mongol military strategy. Students come from everywhere. It becomes the Harvard and MIT of the medieval world, except 400 years early. 1550 to 1700, the Renaissance that changed everything. You know the European Renaissance? Imagine that, but supercharged and global. Because the Commonwealth controls the entire Silk Road and actively promotes cultural exchange, ideas flow faster than ever in human history. Chinese printing technology meets Islamic optics meets European metallurgy. The result? A scientific revolution by 1580. The telescope is invented in 1592, not in Holland, but in Tabriz. Astronomy explodes. By 1605, Commonwealth scientists have confirmed heliocentrism and mapped the major planets. Medicine advances at breakneck speed. Because the Commonwealth spans so many climates and cultures, physicians share knowledge constantly. Smallpox inoculation, which in our timeline doesn't happen until 1796, is developed in 1630. Germ theory emerges by 1680 through collaboration between Chinese, Persian, and European doctors. The printing press spreads everywhere by 1520. But here's the kicker. Because the Commonwealth is multilingual, they develop modular type systems that work for Latin, Arabic, Chinese, and Cyrillic scripts. Mass literacy follows. By 1650, over 40% of Commonwealth citizens can read, a rate Europe won't hit until 1900 in our timeline. 700 to 850, the Industrial Revolution reimagined. The Industrial Revolution happens, but it's not centered in Britain. It's distributed across the Commonwealth. Steam engines are developed simultaneously in workshops in Manchester, Guangzhou, and Isfahan. The knowledge spreads instantly via the still-functioning YAM system, now upgraded to include semaphore networks. But here's what's different. Because the Commonwealth has strong labor protections and democratic institutions, industrialization doesn't create the brutal working conditions of our timeline. Workers have representation. Child labor is banned in 1745. Factories are regulated. The wealth generated is distributed more equitably. By 1800, the Commonwealth has railroads spanning from Beijing to Prague. Telegraph systems by 1820. The first commercial electrical grid in 1848. In Karakoram, naturally. The modern era arrives. By 1900, the Commonwealth is a confederation of over 80 autonomous regions with a combined population of 800 million people. It's democratic, prosperous, and scientifically advanced beyond anything in our timeline. They reach the South Pole in 1898, develop flight in 1901, split the atom in 1929. Computers emerge in the 1940s, but without World War II to drive military applications, they develop for civilian use, education, medicine, infrastructure. By 2025 in this timeline, humanity has achieved post-scarcity economics in much of the Commonwealth. Climate change was addressed early through coordinated policy. Space colonization is underway. The first Commonwealth base on Mars opens in 2019. Wars are rare because the conflict resolution mechanisms developed over centuries actually work. Democracy spans the globe. The technological level is roughly 30 years ahead of our timeline. This is the world unity could have built. Scenario B, the eternal conquest. The vote fails, domination wins. 453 to 550, the second wave. The Khans decide the empire's purpose is what it always was: expansion. But now they have gunpowder, better ships, and 5 centuries of institutional knowledge about conquering and administering territories. Europe is first. The Commonwealth, now called the Eternal Khanate, invades in 1458. Vienna falls in 1461. Paris in 1469. By 1480, everything east of the Rhine is under Mongol control. The Renaissance? Crushed before it starts. The printing press? Controlled technology, available only to imperial administrators. But Europe is just the beginning. In 1492, Mongol ships reach the Americas, 50 years before Columbus in our timeline, because they started earlier from Chinese shipyards. What follows is genocide on an unimaginable scale. 1550 to 1700, the global empire. By 1550, the Eternal Khanate controls Eurasia, North Africa, and has established brutal colonial systems in the Americas. The population of the Western Hemisphere drops from 50 million to 8 million through disease, enslavement, and systematic extermination. There's no concept of human rights. The Khanate operates on pure hierarchical control: Mongol aristocracy at the top, collaborator classes in the middle, everyone else at the bottom. Rebellions are crushed with horrifying efficiency. The Khanate has perfected surveillance and control systems that would make Stalin jealous, except they're doing it in the 1600s. Science advances, but only in service of empire. Military technology, better weapons, more efficient ways to control populations. There's no free inquiry, no philosophy beyond state ideology, no art except propaganda. By 1700, 80% of Earth's landmass is under Mongol control. It's the most successful empire in human history, and it's an absolute nightmare for anyone who isn't part of the ruling class. 700 to 900, the stagnation. Here's the thing about eternal empires: they stagnate. Without competition, without challenge, innovation slows. By 1750, the Khanate is technologically behind where they should be. They have guns and ships, but they're still using 16th century designs. Why? Because the aristocracy has no incentive to innovate. They're on top. Change threatens their position, so they suppress it. Engineers who propose radical new ideas are ignored or eliminated. The empire becomes bureaucratic, conservative, and paranoid. Rebellions happen constantly, in India, in Europe, in China. But the Khanate has so much institutional knowledge about crushing dissent that nothing succeeds. They've created a system that can perpetuate itself indefinitely through sheer brutality. 1900 to 2025, the question. By 1900, cracks are showing. Regional governors are corrupt, infrastructure is crumbling, the population is restless. Technology has barely advanced past 1800 levels because all resources go to maintaining control, not innovation. Some parts of the empire industrialize, but it's uneven. Massive inequality emerges, not just between rulers and ruled, but between regions. The wealth flows to traditional power centers, while peripheries are exploited and abandoned. In our timeline's 2025, this world is a dystopia. No internet, too dangerous for control. No space exploration, why would they? No climate action. The Khanate's short-term extraction model has ravaged the planet. The environment is collapsing, but the Empire's only response is more control. Over 1 billion people live under direct surveillance. Genetic technology exists, but it's used for population control, not medicine. AI is being developed, but only for military and monitoring applications. And here's the terrifying part. The system is stable. There's no rival power, no alternative model, no escape. Humanity is trapped in a global cage that has existed for 6 centuries, and nobody alive can even imagine what freedom looks like anymore. This is the world eternal domination created. If this alternate history scenario just rewired your brain, smash that subscribe button. We explore mind-bending what-if timelines every week that'll change how you see history forever. And here's your vote. Which ending feels more realistic if the Mongols had actually stayed united? Drop an A in the comments for the Commonwealth future, or a B for the eternal conquest. I genuinely want to know which path you think they would have taken. So there it is. Same turning point, same empire. 2 futures separated by a single choice in 1453. Evolve or conquer. Here's what messes me up about this scenario. The Mongols were this close to creating something amazing. They had religious tolerance, meritocracy, free trade, and cultural exchange at a time when Europe was burning heretics. If they'd just held it together, if they'd evolved instead of fractured, human history could have been radically different. But they didn't. And maybe that's the lesson. It's not enough to be powerful. You have to decide what that power is for. Because empires that exist only to expand eventually eat themselves. But systems built on cooperation, even if they're imperfect, those can change the world. So here's my question for you. If you could go back to 1294 and whisper one piece of advice to Timur Khan, what would it be? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what you'd say. And vote. A, if you think the Commonwealth future was possible. B, if you think the eternal Khanate was inevitable. Because honestly, I go back and forth on this one. Next week, we're exploring another timeline that'll blow your mind. Until then, stay curious, question everything, and remember, history isn't destiny. It's just the choices our ancestors made. We're still making ours. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.